Hi there, and welcome to Motivational Moments Live with me, Belinda Bwedu, your host. Hi there, and welcome to Motivational Moments Live with me, Belinda Bwedu, your host. If you're here for another session of our Motivational Moments Live, I would like to warmly welcome you. It's always such a joy to know that you are joining me once again. And if you are new here, you too are so warmly welcome. I would love to tell you a little bit more about Motivational Moments Live and what we are all about. Essentially, Impart and Impact is an education, career and business consultancy, and Motivational Moments Live is part of that, where I come on bi-weekly to give you the motivation, inspiration you need to get up, go and achieve your goals. And today, as usual, I come with some super duper topics that I'm really excited to talk to you about. The first one I want to delve into is effective communication, and we're going to talk about that across the board. Whether it be within the career space, whether it be within relationships, we're going to basically break it all down and discuss it in detail. And then we're going to talk about what to do when it all gets overwhelming, what to do when it all gets overwhelming. So I think I want to start with effective communication. What essentially is communication, and what does it mean to be able to do it effectively? Communication, as some of you may know, is the ability to converse, talk, listen, basically share information with another individual or a group in some way, form or fashion. But what a lot of people don't understand is that communication is a two-way stream. It involves being the one who communicates, i.e. speaks, and it also involves being able to assimilate what the other party is communicating back to you, whether that be verbal or non-verbal communication. And often I think a lot of people fall into a communication fail trap because they are not quite doing both. Often we're super good at doing lots of this and not so good at doing this. There's a saying that goes, we've got one mouth but two ears, so we have to do twice the listening, and listening forms a super important part of communication. Why have I decided to talk about this topic? Because basically communication or lack of effective communication causes breakdown in a lot of different types of relationships. People are misunderstood. You hear that, we had a misunderstanding. You hear that, that they weren't listening to me, they weren't understanding me, and all of that is to do with how we are communicating. And both parties play a role in terms of, what you are doing to ensure that the other party is receiving what you have to say, as well as you communicating effectively enough for that individual to understand what you mean. And I hope I'm doing communication justice today. I don't want to get all fumbled up. So the first basics of effective communication is, if you are the speaker, you need to clearly know and have outlined in your own mind what the end goal is that you're trying to achieve. What is it you're actually trying to say? Have you thought it through? Before you say anything, it is always wise to really process it into your mind and think, what is it I'm trying to say? Is there a need in saying it? Can I say it in a better way than what I'm trying to say right now? And I'll use, for example, when you are angry, yes, you're angry. Yes, someone has offended you, but what you're going to say right now, what journey is it going to take you on? Is it going to be wise to go down that journey, or will it be better if you perhaps process a little bit longer, think about it, and then, either not say anything at all or be very mindful of the words you choose before you say them, right? So by processing our thoughts and processing our words, we save ourselves from a whole lot of trouble. There's a lot of drama that often times we don't need to go through when we have thought about what we're going to say. Words are irrevocable, right? Once you've started and once you start saying certain things, you can't take them back. And all you might be able to do is apologize, but an apology does not wipe memory. An apology does not essentially say, oh, it never happened. Yes, the person is sorry for saying what they said, but ultimately they said it, and it probably already has done the damage that it intended to do. So it's always going to be super wise to think about what you're saying before you go ahead and say it. I have quite a clear policy. I'm not a talking type of person, surprise, surprise, but when it comes to sort of day-to-day conversations, a lot of my conversations take place in written format, so via WhatsApp or what have you, simply because I am the type of person that really likes to process what I am and think through what I am about to say before I say it, and have the chance to assimilate the information that you are giving me before I respond to it. And often when you're having a regular conversation, you might not have the time to be able to do that. So, you know, the person talks, you are inclined to want to respond immediately, and it can just get you into quite a bit of trouble. And I found that by adapting that model most of the time, when most of my communication is in written format, when someone said something to me or typed something to me or whatever that really flares up my anger, I have this policy of just step away from it, you know. Don't respond now, regardless of how upset you are, regardless of how cruel or how mean the message seems to be. Do not respond. And I always find, honestly, 99.9% of the time, when I'm able to step away from that and come back to it, I'm able to think through a logical, more pleasant way of responding than what my initial emotional reaction would have been. And I save myself a lot of trouble when I'm doing that. So if you find that you are someone whose tempers flare quite quickly, and not that my tempers flare quickly at all, it just happens to be the mode of communication that I prefer, and it's not very often that someone upsets me, but whenever that has been the case, I find that that really helps. And perhaps if you are someone whose tempers flare, or you know, you kind of like as they call it, verbal diarrhea, you know, your mouth opens and so much comes out and you can hardly stop yourself, it may well be a policy that you'd be happy to adapt to ensure that, you know, you don't say the wrong things, or you say things that you will later regret. Obviously, when it comes to effective communication, it means that the party that's listening also or equally has an important part to play, whereby you are listening. I think we fall into a trap nowadays where all too often when one person is speaking, you are preoccupied with all sorts of things. Most of the time, and I'm sure so many of us fall guilty of this, you have a phone in your hand, right? So someone's talking to you, telling you something. It might even be your kids, it might be your spouse, it might be a friend, but you have your phone in your hand and you're doing something else. You know, you're flicking through pictures, you're texting someone else. It's become such a norm, but when you really think about it, it shouldn't be a norm. Everyone deserves to have your total attention. Maybe, for example, with the kids, they can't have your total attention all the time, but you have to really try. I've noticed that whenever I have done that, you know, when my daughter is desperately trying to get my attention and I am busy on my phone and I might well be working, which is most of the time, she will go, Mom, you're not listening to me. And then I really have to stop everything I'm doing, put the phone down and go, okay, Zamora, let's talk. And then she would be happy and she would tell me her little anecdote, however silly, however ridiculous, however non-important it may be. But for her, it is so important for me to give her that attention and listen to her. And I think, you know, that reflects truly where we should all be, as adults, as grown-ups, that we need to be able to offer our attention to whoever is demanding it. If someone's speaking to you and they are asking you a question or they want to share a quick anecdote, it isn't a particularly nice feeling when that person is then on their phone texting someone else, or that person is on their phone flicking through Instagram. It essentially shows the other party that they are not important enough to grab your full attention, that that other listening party just isn't worth your full time. And when you think about it that way, it really evokes some thinking. Is that what you want someone to be thinking about you? Is that how you want a friend to feel? Is that how you want your partner to feel? Is that how you want your children to feel? And I'm pretty sure that the answer is no. I have someone, and I'm not going to mention who they are, who has a habit of, when I'm in the middle of a conversation with them, they make a phone call, or a phone call comes through and they will answer it. And I found that it actually hurt my feelings, because it's not particularly nice. It means that something else is more important than what I have to say to you right now, or the conversation that we're having right now. So I had to eventually pull them to the side and say, this is how you make me feel. And sharing that helped them to realize that, oh, I never really thought about that, and we have to be very conscious about how we make people feel, or what we make people think about us whenever we are communicating with them. It doesn't take much to listen to 2 minutes worth of a quick convo, a quick anecdote, a quick share that isn't shared with so many other things that you are doing. I can't imagine that if you are at work and you have either a colleague or your manager or your boss come and talk to you, that you will be speaking to them and be scrolling through your phone, or be speaking to them and then halfway through what they're saying, quickly go and have a quick laugh with your colleague sitting on the side, and then come back and say, okay, so what were we saying? I'm sure that wouldn't be acceptable. It wouldn't be acceptable in the working place. So why should that be acceptable in your personal relationships and your day-to-day? And you might be saying to me, well, Belinda, when it comes to, say, the kids, or they're always around and we're always talking, so I can't kind of be that formal with them all the time. And no, that isn't what I'm saying. Of course, you need some time where you just get on with what you're doing. But with our level of addiction to our phones, and our level of addiction to how much time we spend on our devices, and how we need it constantly at our fingertips, you will realize, and let me ask this question. Perhaps a lot of you are using smartphones nowadays, and they give you reports of how many hours you spend on your phone, either per day, per week, maybe even in a month. Honestly, don't you find it shocking how it can tell you that in 24 hours you spend 15, 16, 17 hours on your phone? That's shocking. That is absolutely shocking. And sometimes it will break it down further and tell you how much time you spend on this app and how much time you spend on that app. And it's shocking. And if you genuinely want to tell me that your child or your spouse is going to take up that much of your constant attention, and you can't give them a few minutes at a time where you put the phone down, where you close the laptop, where you switch the TV off and just say, okay, I'm listening. It's so important. It's so, so important. And I have to say, for those of you who have children, or those of you who are hoping to have children in the future, it goes a really long way to shaping your children, It really goes a long way to shaping your children and how they feel about how much time their parents, their mom, their dad, got to dedicate to them. So be mindful of that, They will feel so special if they come to you and they're like, mommy, guess what? And you're busy on your phone, but you put the phone down and you say, sweetheart, tell me, let me guess. Okay, is it something to do with your toys? Just engaging with them where they go, wow, I got 100% of mommy's attention. I got 100% of daddy's attention. It will mean the world to them. And guess what? Try it on your partner, try it on your spouse. And they may be equally shocked and surprised that, oh my goodness, like I came home and I said hi and you stopped everything you were doing and you sat there and you listened to me, you know? Just try it. It makes for an interesting change. I have this habit of when hubby comes home at a decent time, which is rarely, and he sits down to eat, I stop everything and I will sit down and I'll be like, okay, so how was your day? And I'll sit there attentively, listening, and he will be on his phone, like he will be responding and he's on his phone, but I'm still attentively like, okay, tell me more, and I'm hoping that process helps him to understand that, well, that's a more effective way of communicating and you don't always have to be on your phone. But that's another issue because he's always on his phone. Anyway, that's another issue. So let's learn to be more effective in the way we communicate to one another. Of course, communication is not always through speech, sometimes, as I said, one of the ways that I really like to communicate with people is through written format, and I've given you an example as to how that helps me. It helps me to just process my thoughts, think through what I want to say, and just arrange how I want to say it effectively. And we also have to be mindful of our non-verbal cues. Sometimes our mouth is saying one thing, but our face is saying something completely different. Our attitude is saying something completely different. Are those two adding up? Are we being honest? It's important to always be as honest to yourself as you possibly can. If you're going to give your time to someone, you might as well let that time be as honest a time as possible, rather than one where you're not interested, or you're saying something that you don't believe in, or you're saying something but really your mind is completely elsewhere. If you don't have that time to engage at the moment, be frank. Say, I'm afraid at the moment I really have a few other things to do. Let me try and wrap up with that, and then I'll give you all my time and attention, rather than, dividing your time or being bored. I remember, and this seems so rude, but I have to be super honest. In university, I remember there was a friend of mine. She was sort of like a flatmate. And I was in her room or something like that, and she was talking for a really long time about, I think, a cake she baked. And in all honesty, I completely zoned out. She had been going on for so long, and I realized that I just was no longer listening. And I just said, I'm really sorry, I have to stop you there. I've stopped listening. I've zoned out. I said, I'm really sorry, but I don't wanna waste your time. And as rude as that seems, and yes, I was considerably younger, but I even appreciate my frankness at that point in time. And I think she would have done too. I hope she would have done too, because there's just no point wasting someone's time when they think they're engaging you, they think that telling you the most thrilling story of their life, and as thrilling as it might be, if you are preoccupied, if you have other things on your mind and you're just not paying attention, then you might as well be honest about it. And I also think when it comes to communication, another thing that I would really like to share is you don't always have to join the conversation. You don't always have to join the conversation. And I don't mean this from only a verbal two-way point of view. I'm talking about online communication, what's trending, what's happening on Instagram, on social media. You don't always have to share your thoughts with people, It's not always a must. Some people tend to jump on the bandwagon when there is a certain kind of movement going on, or there's a certain type of slogan going on. People just kind of hop on because they have a big fear of seeming to not care than to really take the time and process, take the time and process what they really think. So they join the masses in what is the most common trend, or the most sorry, the most common theme of what people are saying, and let me say some too. And I think that's a total no-no. You don't always have to join in. If you have nothing to say, if you can't think of anything to say, if you don't have a view, you just don't have a view, and you don't have to say anything. Just keep it moving. And people have a terrible habit of coming and saying horrible things under, say, people's posts. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Your opinion doesn't have to count on everyone's page. So that's another thing that I really want to slip in there. It's not quite, completely in keeping with the theme right now, but I do really want to share, because it's important. I think it's a really important footnote to bear in mind. You don't always have to share. Sometimes your silence speaks way louder than your words ever could, So learn when to speak, when to hold your tongue, when your input is required, and when it's best to just stay out of it and stay quiet, because all of that is part of communication. It's not always just what comes out of your mouth. Sometimes it's what you didn't say. Sometimes it's when you didn't speak at all that speaks the loudest. So learn the difference according to various situations, and you will live long and be happy and prosper. So yes, that gives me pretty much all I wanted to share about effective communication. Be sure that you're doing as much listening or more listening than you're doing the talking. Be sure that you are attentive when having conversations. Be mindful of other devices or other things you're doing that is distracting you from giving your total attention to someone. Those are the things that I just want to share with you at this point in time. So let's move on to when you become overwhelmed, how to deal with being too overwhelmed. And without word of a lie, we all become overwhelmed from time to time, It's easy to just imagine that that's something that some people deal with and not necessarily you, but at some point we will all become overwhelmed, whether that's to do with being overwhelmed at home, being overwhelmed with chores, being overwhelmed with work, being overwhelmed with school. At some point, it gets too much. For some people, that can put you into a place of being completely overwhelmed, where you slip into things like depression, where you slip into things like not being able to cope at all. But I think today we're not going to talk so much about that. Maybe I'll do a little bit on that. But now here I'm talking about just generally. First of all, it's good to accept when you are just overwhelmed, when it's too much, and it's just too much for you to deal with, it's just too much for you to cope with. Just accept it, and wherever possible, take a step, take a moment back, and just switch off if you can. Sometimes that switch off may literally be 5 minutes. Say, for example, at work, you're dealing with very intensive business cases, whatever, and it's all a bit too much. And you need to just step away from it. You would walk away from your desk, take a 5-minute break, make yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and then, come back to it maybe a bit later. That's a very normal thing to do when you're in work settings. Sometimes, say, for example, when you're at home and you've got kids and they're screaming and they're making noise and they're not listening and all of the rest of it, it is perfectly acceptable as a mom, as a dad, as a parent to just say, I need to just switch off. Like right now, I may need to take a step away. I might need to go into my room for 5 minutes, make sure that, of course, the children are safe, but I just need some time to myself. Because when you become continuously overwhelmed and you have the feeling that you can't do anything about it, or you have the feeling that it's just reoccurring and you can't control it, that's when you have bigger chances of slipping into being depressed. or whether overwhelmedness turns into chronic stress. It's normal to be stressed, it's a normal response within us. It's part of sort of like our fight and flight mode. Being stressed is a way our bodies respond and react to pressure, especially when you're dealing within very tight time constraints and needing to achieve something that you feel you don't have the capacity or the resources to deal with at the time. That's when we become stressed. But becoming chronically stressed and that slipping into a depression means that you begin to not cope with even the most mundanest of tasks because everything just overwhelms you. So first of all, take a moment and breathe. You can find breathing exercises that could help you through those moments that you can quickly apply. Close your eyes, just take yourself into a certain zone and just breathe. Relaxation techniques, there's tons of stuff on YouTube that you can look up and learn from. Not going to go into that so much, but just first of all, take a time to just breathe. Secondly, if you can switch off or you can take a step back or move away from the task at hand, please do so. If it means going for a walk, if it means stepping away from your desk, if it means locking yourself in your room for a few moments so you can escape the noise from the kids, then absolutely do so. And then thirdly, don't be afraid to ask for help, okay? Where needed, if you're becoming overwhelmed because the workload you are dealing with is just too much, ask for help. Ask for help. And then fourthly, which is part and parcel maybe of asking for help, is learning to let things go. It's not everything we can control all the time. It's not everything that we can handle and do at the same time. So learn to let things go. You can accept that, okay, if I'm dealing with 4 different pieces of work right now, I'm overwhelmed, this feels like too much. I'm asking my colleague, perhaps can they help take 2 or so off my hands? My colleague says, actually, I can only do 1. Fine, that leaves me with 4, which is still quite overwhelming. You know what? I'm going to let one of those just go. I'll deal with them later. I'll deal with them tomorrow. I'll deal with it at another time. But don't try and over maximize and stress your capacity to a point where you're breaking down. No one wants that. It's not healthy. It's not helpful. There is a time and place for stretching yourself. There is a time and place for really, really pushing yourself. And being overwhelmed is not it. Feeling like you're sinking, feeling like you're not able to keep it together is not the time to be proving your prowess in how far you can stretch yourself. So breathe, take a step back, ask for help, and let things go. Those are going to be my 4 takeaways for you. We're going to go through those again. Take a moment to breathe. Take a step back. That can be a 5-minute break, a walk, or lock yourself up in your room for a moment. Number 3, ask for help. That could be asking your spouse, I'm too overwhelmed. I am not coping very well. It's too much for me. All the things I'm doing at home, looking after the house, looking after the kids, going to work, it's all a bit too much. I need your help. And number 4, let things go. Okay, clearly I'm not Superwoman. I can't do a full-time this and a full-time this and a full-time this and thrive at all of them all at the same time. Which of these things can I make a really practical, helpful assessment with and say to myself, let me handle just this for this time being, park these 2 for a little while, deal with those as effectively as I can, then come back to them and deal with the other 2 as effectively as I can. That's all you need to do. It may sound like I'm oversimplifying it, because obviously life is chaotic. Life brings with it a lot of different things. But honestly, this is really what needs to be happening. Anyone who's listening to me right now who does find themselves very overwhelmed with life, especially during the times that we're in right now. Everything seems so daunting, everything seems so scary, there's so much uncertainty. It can all feel so overwhelming. If you practice the 4 steps that I have just shared with you, I am so sure that you'll find you coping a lot better than you would have done without adapting to those 4 steps. So give it a try. Give it a try. So it's short and simple. I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to address those for you. It's always so nice to read your comments and to get a view of what topics or what areas you are most interested in that you'd like me to do some sharing on. So by all means, please do let me know. But otherwise, I hope you have enjoyed today's topic. So effective communication and what to do when you become too overwhelmed. If you need to catch up with any of my previous seasons, you can follow my YouTube page, which is Belinda Boadu, or I think you can also search it under Motivational Moments Live. We have so many editions under our belt. Today's our 15th edition in our season 2. So you can imagine there's so much information for you out there, all sorts of motivation, inspiration to keep you going. So please do subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it, and tell a friend to tell a friend. And then I can't go without encouraging all my ladies to follow Atana Women. We've got so many amazing things going on. The Atana moms are having a whale of a time learning amazing things with these Zoom expert sessions that we've been having. Our experts have been just superb, and I know our Atana women are asking, when are we going to be doing something for them? Trust me, ladies, your turn is coming up, and we're going to give you something that's just going to absolutely blow your mind. So please make sure you're following Atana Women. For the men, follow Atana Men. We're loading, we're preparing, we're getting ready to unleash all sorts of goodness for you. So make sure you're following Atana Men. If you're into your cooking, your inspiration for food, you definitely want to be following Belinda Boadu Cooking. And oh my goodness, ladies, Bella's Blessing has some exciting sales coming up to get you ready for Christmas. So ensure you are following Bella's Blessing on Instagram, Facebook, all the fantastic jewelry. This is a piece from Bella's Blessing that I'm wearing right now. So make sure you are following, because the sales we're going to be doing is absolutely super mind-blowing. So be following that. And I think that brings us up to speed with all the things that I would love for you to support me with. I am going to leave it there. Have a wonderful week. I'm so grateful you took the time to join me on here. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe. My goodness, everyone seems to think that this thing is gone, and yet it's creeping up behind us and making people sick, and still death tolls are rising. So be safe out there. Do be safe. Mask up, sanitize up, social distance. Don't go anywhere where you don't need to go. The parties are always going to be there. So stay safe. Your life really matters. So stay super safe out there. Thanks everyone, and catch you soon. Ciao.